Ooh. Yo, this is not comedy. Like, I know, this is just a vlog. This is not comedy or creative arts. This is just, I need accompaniment. Like, I've mentioned this in the last vlogs. I'm really poorly. Because I'm actually wondering, I got ill in December 2023. And I just recall being extremely ill, and I have like an oxygen reader, and it was extremely low back then. And I told my family, but I don't really want to, you know, like incriminate my family, that I've been really disempowered by psychiatry. Like people like my mum, you know, that should have had a say years ago, and that was, my mum was like laughed at when she mentioned my menstrual cycle to a psychiatrist. Hi Jason. Thanks for commenting. So, you know, and having endometriosis is, I don't know how many times I have to say this. I think like physical health, and whether you're rich or, well, not necessarily rich, but if you're poor enough to not have enough, and then your mental health, that's your mental health, right? Your physical poverty equals mental illness. I think that's actually what I'm trying to say. Physical poverty, material poverty equals mental illness. Everything else is garbage. Everything else is made up, is playing on your emotions, your romanticism, and your naivety, and your ignorance, and your fear. Fear, naivety, ignorance, romanticism. These ideas of mental illness, of which there's now some 400 different categories of mental illness, plays on your ignorance, your fear, and your romanticism. But what mental illness actually is material poverty. It's being oppressed by an oppressor, such as a child rapist. Because nobody at the age of 17 should go into psychiatric care having been abusing themselves with narcotics and alcohol for half a decade, or like the entirety of their teens, go into hospital with a psychosis from speed and so on, amphetamines, disclose childhood sexual exploitation, and still only be 17, still living at home, and have that dressed up just as a mental illness, like, or discounted, discredited, and blocked with drugs such as lorazepam and haloperidol used conjunctively. Disclosing childhood sexual exploitation from a child's mouth should never ever be chalked up to being a mental illness. So that's so what I'm trying to say is the cause of a disease is the most important thing to treat. It's not serotonin or dopamine. These are hormones. They're not chemical messengers. They are hormones, which have been relabeled by psychiatry to try to move on from the sort of 50s and 60s, when they discredited themselves by focusing on women's mental health too much, saying that that's hormonal. And then they rebranded the same hormones as chemical messengers, saying you have a chemical imbalance in your brain. My generation of parents bought that ticket 100%, largely because of the abuse that goes on behind doors in psychiatric settings, whether that's in a one-to-one appointment with a psychiatrist or inpatient. The abuses that are covered up there cause people breakdowns. The drugs cause people to appear mentally ill, to become obese, apathetic to the point they won't move unless it's to get a beer glass. This isn't really what I even came here to say, but these are social, material issues of poverty, such as rare diseases, psychiatry, which are dressed up as mental illness. And psychiatry is actively involved in covering up physical diseases, social oppressions, other forms of material poverty, such as social poverty, unemployment, abuses, some kind of relational abuses, they will cover them up with a label of mental illness, and then they will cover that up with a drug, which will then appear to anyone looking from outside that effects of those drugs and the effects of the treatment itself that went on behind closed doors, that's the mental illness that people then identify with that person. So then if that person starts saying that they suffered exploitation as a child, are they not to be believed? So I've actually made this live for some support today because I'm sick. I went to the NHS. I was supposed to be allowed to sit and wait, and I was not allowed to sit and wait. It was 5:25. I'm not sure that they don't close till 6:30, and there was one other person waiting, but I was not allowed to sit and wait. And then when I asked simply, can I bring my mucus sample in tomorrow, she refused. The receptionist, who didn't actually book me, the receptionist that I went to was not the same secretary that triaged me. So, but the secretary that refused me to be allowed to sit down and wait to be seen by a doctor when I've already been seen by a private doctor. So actually all I needed to do was just give a sputum sample, but she wouldn't let me sit and wait. She refused to tell me what time to bring my sample in the next day. And bearing in mind, it took me about half an hour to walk to the doctor's surgery. I'm not in a car. I went to get my bike, and my bike had been destroyed. The frame is bent. Where I'd left it outside, I'd taken the saddle off and secured a lock on it. The bike is fucked. The way it's been done is clearly intentional. That the the pedal is stuck in the railings, it can't be moved. The frame is bent. So even if it was just a case of getting a new back wheel, it's not. The bike is gone. Hi everyone in the chat. So I'm not actually sure, just brings back to the pneumonia thing that I have been diagnosed with, and according to the CDC website, which bizarre that I'd be quoting the CDC website, but according to that, the particular type of pneumonia that I have kills 1 in 20 people that have it. So I've either had it since 2 Decembers ago, or possibly, in fact, it was actually with the assassination attempt last year in June equinox, just literally a couple of hours before the equinox was at its apex. I had 3 needle marks in my arms. One of them was obviously fentanyl. Why would they all be fentanyl? Possibly this pneumonia was given to me in that assassination attempt. And I feel this weird gap between my life experiences and the general responses from people that are in positions where they could share my story. Journalists of different types. Now I understand that it takes time to build trust with a person to know that your story is legitimate. But I also think in my case, well, I think a lot of things. Vinix asking who tried to assassinate. Hello, Spider. Hello, Rob. Hello, Martin. Hello, Vinix. Hello, Jason. I don't know. The Secret Services. I'm a survivor of childhood survivor of Epstein and Glenn Maxwell. So the general narrative is, I don't give like a name to who, because some people will then say Mossad, but then it becomes like a politically divisive issue if you say Mossad, or you say CIA, or you say Five Eyes. That's Satan. No name. No name. From my perspective only, like I would say that, well, it's just Satan. You know, and it's very, you don't have to be the most intelligent person to work for the intelligence services. People can be recruited really easily because it makes them feel special, it makes them feel important, and they'll be told lies about the person that they're targeting. They're fools. They're told lies about that person, usually an inversion of the truth. of course, Virginia has passed on. I feel there's a weird gap between it because the narrative, the media narrative, I'm sorry this is a horrendous angle to be recording a video on. I shouldn't wonder to myself why they're not reshared. But it's a little tricky. I don't know where to put the camera. The general narrative for the Epstein survivors, victims, survivors, was that they were 17-year-old girls. And that is not the case. That was not the case. Myself and other children that were involved in were going to Arc Yoga in Hampstead, where I met Glenn Maxwell. I was there from 5 or 6 years of age, just for a couple of years. And then we would go to a theatre in Hampstead, which is not Hampstead Theatre because that's above a pub in Hampstead. It's a different theatre that I think is I know is in Swiss Cottage. And I think in fact, it was a mobile theatre, but I don't think it was very easily mobile. It was in place. I think it's been replaced now, but it's pretty much in the same place, between Swiss Cottage and Hampstead. And we went there sometimes, and that's where we were drugged and we were raped. And I don't need to, I know it was filmed, not because I remember anyone filming, but because it would have been filmed. It would have been. And we were 6. We were a group of 6-year-olds. So I feel like a really weird space in myself right now. Because because I need help with this pneumonia thing. I need to get another mucus sample to see if we're still dealing with the same bacteria or not. And if I need antibiotics again or not. And I do not have the money, and I'm not begging anyone because that has to come from within a person that they would want to do that. But I would need £120, or technically £121, to get another private sample done, mucus sample. And I don't have that money. And then I would need another £70, technically £69, to go and see the doctor again. And I would need another £10 to pick up the prescription. But I have been so isolated by Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, arthritis, and endometriosis. And all of that has been chalked up to being mentally deficient in some way. Was not diagnosed, was considered part of my mental illness. Severe pains. Severe ongoing chronic pain in my joints, which got me in physiotherapy at 12, 13, in front of a doctor at 14 with chronic pain, chronic joint pain, chronic fatigue. Was not referred, was not examined, was offered an antidepressant, was diagnosed with growing pains, when I'd already been in physiotherapy for a year. And then all of that was just chalked up to mental illness. The key fact is that I disclosed abuse at 17 on my first admission, and it was never mentioned again. And then some 10 years later, I was told that all the notes they had from me previously were gone. In psychiatry, couldn't be found. And a year ago, or maybe 2 years ago, because the assassination attempt was off the back of me writing my autobiography. And I was struggling to do that autobiography because I was not receiving any physiotherapy, which I need every week minimum. I was not seeing a counsellor or someone, had no one to talk to. Even when I'd come home from writing, there was nobody here to talk to defrag, to change the subject. And I'd asked somebody, purely for not knowing who else to ask, for some help with some money, so I could support myself through that time. Then when the book was published, return the money to them, share ownership of publishing rights, whatever. And I just haven't had any luck with that, and that's okay. Eventually, I stopped writing. I published 2 very short segments on Substack. Somebody came to stay here that was supposedly homeless, maybe he's homeless, I don't know. And maybe for a little bit of money, he could set up a password on the laptop, which I then didn't have the money to break the password on. I ended up cashing in the laptop for 30 quid and it was taken to pieces. Complete mismanagement, all the way. Or just lack of management, no management. So I really don't have anyone in my flat anymore, because every time I've taken people in, or you know, on a temporary basis, just to give them some shelter and not ask for money, it's backfired. But the assassination attempt didn't come out of nowhere. It came off the back of me having a Patreon, saying I was writing my autobiography. I had 2 patrons, both of which were friends of mine. So it wasn't really about the money, like £5 a month each, but it was just enough to keep me accountable and keep going and keep writing, and I was writing well. Not necessarily because I've got a creative writing degree, but maybe because of these head injuries. The original assassination attempt was long ago via a guy that was hearing voices telling him to kill me, and my God, did he try to kill me. And I had to learn how to speak again. And I'm still tender. So kind of simple, short, direct, which is pretty much was my style at uni as well. I did a lot of life writing at uni. It was a long time ago. And I had alcoholism from taking risperidol. Because those drugs, the antidote to akathisia is red wine. That is from a medical textbook in 2000 called Psychiatric Drugs Explained. And I was already very hooked on red wine by the time that I bought that book. Read that book. Because it is the antidote to akathisia, which again is chalked up as being part of your mental illness. Silly comments. So I just thought I'd come here because I've been awake for several hours now. Yes, it's 9 p.m, but actually I've only been awake 2 hours, and there's no one to converse with. I'm just stuck with hearing my own voice and people having a nice time outside. Have no one to meet up with. I'm not safe around men. Like, they are just idiots, quite honestly. They just want sex. They don't. We're just fucking bankrupt here, I think, morally. Sorry, I don't want to get on a soapbox. I really don't want to get on a soapbox. And the way that the metal inside of me is used as well to give me pain and other arousal. It's like, for some reason, I'm just not well connected with anyone else that's like in the truth-telling community or exposing any of this. I'm in the crazy corner, and I really feel like really close to just, I think like if I didn't just have access to social media as soon as I turn on my phone every day, like I'm out, like I quit, like sometimes I wondered like whether this book of mine can't come out because I'm not sure that I would single-handedly be able to shatter a paradigm to do with physical health and mental illness, but maybe the romanticism of it is too strong for a lot of people. Or maybe it was too difficult for me. Or maybe I don't have to. I know that it's not true that it doesn't matter. Of course it matters. It's a little bit overwhelmed. Like, my child is gone. My mum was adopted. It's a perfect storm. No, I'm not undermining your comments to Starving Marvin. I feel a little bit like just 20 minutes is enough. I'll make coffee or something. Sorry if I don't finish off some of my sentences. I'm just spitting mucus all the time. It's horrible. So I wrote some lyrics recently, which, would be just great to see if I have a beat somewhere that somebody's already sent me, or find a beat, see if I can record it for you. I have a mic, or I can potentially use a studio if I just practice at home. I'd like to put a track out. But, you know, I'm over the apex of my menstrual cycle and I'm rolling to being premenstrual and worse pain and so lax, like so. EDS, if you take one thing away from this, if you know anyone with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, please give them a call, arrange to go and see them and give them a hug. Thanks for being here.